Welcome to Revlog, where today we have medicated Aaron and
Meta Aaron.
Brian ready to pick up the slack.
That's right.
Thank you, Brian.
I'm pulling taut on the rope.
Yeah.
Always grateful for you, Brian. Always.
Don't kick a man when he's down, by the way.
So are you on the men?
I think you of all people probably know that that's probably not my mantra.
I know I was going to say, one of us has that as a life motto, not you.
I kind of feel like we have half an Aaron today.
Yeah,
is that fair? What percentage
diminished.
are we getting
Oh,
today?
I think we're clearly
We have
63 and a half.
60.
Aaron Minor diminished. I don't know.
Like, that's a good chord. Yeah, okay. I'm just going to let that go. I'm not going to really give you the theory behind that one.
So today, for Revlog, it is a transition week. And what I mean by that, this is the final text in our Sermon on the Mount series. So we're wrapping up this series on the Sermon on the Mount, which means next week we will get into the book of Proverbs.
Yeah.
But I do find it interesting today in our final text in Sermon on the Mount, we get this comparison of the wise and the foolish, which is where Proverbs begins.
Stop.
That's really good. No, I had a pure motive in mind. I was
Me too.
thinking, yeah, I'm sure, pure evil.
But before we get to this final text, though, let me ask you your thoughts on this Sermon on the Mount series. What has it meant to you? What have you seen, learned along the way here through this series? Brian, why don't you start for us?
I love this sermon. I do. I think it's the world's greatest sermon, and it is particularly important, I think, because of the context that Jesus is giving it in. He starts out with the Beatitudes, and he's almost, not almost, I think, he's presenting a vision of life, and he starts with the Beatitudes and goes all the way through the sermon. He's presenting a vision of life that's very different from what his hearers were hearing currently from their teachers.
Yeah. But I say to you.
Yeah. And he starts out, the way I view the Beatitudes is, I just think it's a brilliant vehicle, and it is an entry point for the everyman. Because who isn't brokenhearted? Who doesn't feel like he doesn't measure up, to the lofty goals that his betters always lay out, and who is not weak, or who doesn't lose their words sometimes. And Jesus is saying to all of you, I'm saying the kingdom is actually in reach. It's not something that is locked up in the citadel of the Pharisees. It is open. The invitation is open. The gates are open, and you're blessed. You thought you weren't, but you are blessed. And he goes all the way through, and then he starts that, but I say to you. He is saying that whatever they're trying to build is according to what their teachers are telling them. And Jesus says it's much more profound than that, and it's much deeper, and it's more open, and also more radical than you thought.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful vision.
Yeah. Amen. Aaron, what do you think as you think back over Sermon on the Mount?
I think one of the things I said 13 weeks ago, it's one of the most popular sermons because it's one of the best. I mean, we can make that a platitude. We can make some of these things into little quips, but there's so much more than that. Like Brian said, who among us has not been brokenhearted? Who among us has not been these things? But to take it to the other extreme, because Jesus very quickly says, "Keep my law perfectly," to remind us that even if you haven't been brokenhearted today, you haven't kept the law perfectly. So the need for Jesus and the need for this relationship is so, he just spans the gamut here to say, I am for all of you, and you all have need of this, because the sin is going to lead to this destruction at some point in your life, and it's just beautiful unpacking that's so simple, and yet we are 2,000 years just still trying to comprehend the vast chasm of wealth of knowledge that this brings.
I love what you said. I am for all of you. This is Jesus not being the Pharisees walking up and down inspecting the troops, saying, only a few of you, will be worthy enough to measure up to what I'm laying down for you today. Jesus doesn't do that.
No.
He does say only a few will find this narrow gate, but what he's
That's
saying
different.
there, that is very different. He's saying, you're paying attention to the wrong thing. Your
Yeah.
teachers are
Amen.
telling you about all this.
Yeah.
And I'm here standing all by myself by this little gate here. Anybody want to come in here? And it's just a totally different kind of thing.
Yeah, that's right. Well, today Jesus finishes here with another brilliant analogy, right? A house or two homes built on two different foundations.
Yes.
Brian, get us started here in this particular text. What strikes you here?
What strikes me here in this text is that Jesus says, again, everything you have heard from your teachers is exactly exactly the wrong kind of house to build. And I'm here to tell you that there is a way to stand for eternity and to withstand everything that life can throw at you. And it's not the way that you've heard. It is this vision that I've given you through all of my words here. As those words washed over them, I really believe that people could feel the life in those words. As those words hit their eardrums, I think that there was power in those very sound waves. And I think that as they heard that, they knew that this was, it had to be true. Not everybody would adhere, I guess, that heard that sermon, but for a moment at least, people were thinking, this has got to be true. And Jesus was saying, not only is it true, but this is the forever way.
Yeah.
And everything else is going to fall away except the kind of life I am opening
Well, and I
up
hope
to you
that
today.
rings true for us Sunday too.
Well, I do. I hope it does.
Yeah. Aaron, what stood out to you in this text?
When I reread it this morning in preparation for coming up to be with you guys, it struck me, building a house isn't easy. And the effort that went into that house on the sand, I mean, this is an analogy. Jesus
Right,
is,
yeah, right.
but when we think about that, there's much planning. There is much, that goes into the construction, the materials, the labor, the time. I mean, it takes a lot to construct a house. And that can't be taken away. That there is just much that goes into that. I wonder. I think it's Alamo Heights. There's some parts of the city that have really bad foundations. And you wonder how they read this. They got these homes that are with cracked foundations, and they probably raise their fist at this because it's frustrating. Because all that work on something that is shifting is pretty frustrating. You can imagine that the homeowner going, I've done all these things. It also reminds me of I'm not feeling well, so I don't quite remember, but one of your favorite authors, C.S. Lewis.
Oh, my word.
What?
I think you're misremembering.
I am a all right, I tried to throw that in there. But in one analogy, he was writing about, it's in Mere Christianity, but it talks about
That's one of the books that C.S. Lewis wrote.
when you go about a problem, and it can be a complex mathematical formula, that if you misadd something in the first step, it doesn't matter how beautifully elegant your math is going forward. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's still wrong.
Right.
And you have to go back and correct the
To the beginning,
arithmetic
right.
in order. So it doesn't matter how beautiful this home is. It doesn't matter how much you planned for it, there can be lots of good, hard labor that goes into it, and it doesn't matter if it's not based in Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And so, it just struck me to think about a home that you build and you spend so much time, and you're gonna spend your life there. And I think that's what Jesus is saying. Where are you spending your life?
Yeah. Amen.
May I add one thing?
Please.
When you were talking about the the home being unstable, it reminded me of the fact that Jesus is not denying that. And in fact, he's saying, everybody, I'm not here today to prevent storms from coming into your life. They're going
Right.
to
Yeah.
come. They're
Right.
going to come, and I'm telling you,
That is
you can stand. And it breaks, he may have even thought, it breaks my heart to think of these storms that are going to come, but you will stand.
I feel like a broken record when I tell the youth this all the time, that the promise of Psalm 23 to me is the valley of the shadow of death. I mean,
Yeah.
you will walk the
Yeah.
valley of the shadow.
Yeah,
We
you
all
will.
at some point will do that. And
Nobody is exempted.
That's right. And so Jesus, I love that you said that. It's that he's not saying it's not going to happen. And that is, I think, that message, that joy in the midst of sorrow, that joy in the midst of the trials of the wind that batters and
Well,
beats.
sometimes when the church preaches, it's preaching the wrong promise. It's saying, come to Christ and your dark skies it will turn sunny.
Right,
And that's
yeah.
just not all. That's
Right.
just not real.
Right.
Yeah, and that's not loving our neighbor
No.
either, right?
No.
If we're selling,
That's right.
You know,
Amen.
a field of flowers, right?
Right.
There's storms will come, but the Lord will be with you. Right. Brian, what question do you have of this text?
What am I preaching to people?
Yeah.
And what kind? Am I going beyond the promises of Christ? Am I inferring promises that are not there? What am I telling people?
Aaron, what question do you have of the text?
I would say it's something just almost straight out of the text. What am I building on? That no matter how well-intentioned I may be,
Right.
if I'm not starting rooted in Jesus, then it really just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Amen. We'd love to hear your comments on this text as well, if you'd comment below.